this week I have more streaming from home options, starting with Artemis Fowl, which is on Disney+. And let me tell you, quite possibly the best thing that could have happened to this movie is the pandemic. And that is sad to say, but this movie had a theatrical release slated, and you would have been very upset if you'd paid money to see this. It comes out in the wash if you have Disney+, but like if you had paid, and even especially if you had kids and took this to, you paid what? Probably like $40-$50 to take a family to a theater, like you would have been so upset with your time. It is directed by Kenneth Branagh. Brilliant Shakespearean actor, great Shakespearean director, directed Thor. I don't know what went wrong here. I'm not sure. I remember Artemis Fowl is a children's fantasy series, and I remember vaguely reading it. I was probably too old or not the target demographic by the time it came out, but I still read it and being like, oh, this is clever. I don't remember particularly the specifics of it, but I just remember reading it, being amused. It was what it was. This movie is just bonkers and makes no sense and is very boring and is too long, even though it's very short. I normally don't watch movies with my parents because they talk through everything. And this one, I was just like, you know what? I don't really care. We can watch this as a family. Let's go ahead. And my father immediately proceeded to fall asleep, which I don't blame him for, but that's actually also par for the course. And my mother just had no clue what was going on. And I think that's pretty standard experience for all of us. So story is Artemis Fowl is like a boy genius. His father's played by Colin Farrell. Also, the cast in this movie is just... Kenneth Branagh must have blackmail on everybody involved in this, because why they agreed to do it. So the cast is Colin Farrell plays Artemis Fowl's father. Ferdia Shaw plays Artemis Fowl. I don't think I've seen him in anything. It's tough being a child actor. He was whatever. Josh Gad plays like a gnome thing. And I'm like, okay, Disney must have blackmail on Josh Gad. That I understand. He wants to stay in their good graces. And then you've got Judi Dench. Dame Judi Dench is in this. And I'm like, she must have done this as a favor, and or Kenneth Branagh has hella Shakespearean blackmail on this woman, because why would she be in this? She plays like the police chief of elves or goblins or whatever they are. I think they're elves. And she talks like she smoked a pack a day for 400 years. And I don't know why she's doing this voice. And it's just, oh my God, this movie is like, it had a big budget. The VFX are terrible. It's really boring. The action isn't exciting, even though there's a lot of action. Like, I don't know. Do kids like this? Do kids like this? If you have kids and you had them watch this, please let me know, because this is just, it's certainly not for adults. It's not one of those like enjoyable, like, oh, the whole family will do it. You will be a hostage during the viewing of this. So maybe, the joy of being at home is that you can just turn it on and walk away and not have to suffer through this. There are some sequences that I was like, oh, you thought this was going to be a showstopper, and it is not. And it's clearly setting up for sequels. I hope for its own sake it does not get them. And I get it. It's really hard to make a film, but when you've been given talent and budget and like decent source material, how do you botch this up so badly? I almost dare you to watch Artemis Fowl if you have Disney Plus, just to see if you can sit through it. And just if you want a torture test, like, Artemis Fowl is it. So I'm going to give it 1 out of 5. So next up, speaking of tedious, I've got 7,500 on Amazon. And okay. Joseph Gordon-Levitt stars, and I think Joseph Gordon-Levitt is an amazing actor, and I think he is almost the saving grace of this film, but it is not a good film. And the premise is it takes place in like almost real time-ish, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt is a pilot, and he is on a plane that gets taken over by terrorists. And the whole movie plays out as that experience, and it's only 90 minutes, and I will say, like, the way the time feels in it feels very stressful. Like, the first 3 minutes are just silent security camera footage. I was like, oh, is my sound on? Oh, it is? Okay. Oh, this is a choice we're making. Okay, fine. The next 10 minutes are just them getting a plane ready, like the pilot's getting a plane ready. I was like, oh, that's actually kind of cool in that you don't really see like the tediousness and the like monotony that goes into actually like doing a job on screen, right? It's usually like, okay, click 3 buttons, like this is your captain speaking, we're ready to go. And I was like, that's an interesting technique to kind of like commit to, that they're letting it play out, right? Like they're letting it just be like, no, this is just how it works. And then once it starts, I could not. I could not. I am tired of the, Muslim terrorist trope. I was like, is this based on true events? Did this actually happen? Like, what's going on? Why are we telling this story in 2020? Like, this feels to me like a film that would have been made in like 2003 when like Islamophobia was like super heavy and, or not super heavy, but like the heaviness of like September 11th attacks would have been making their way into scripts that would have been made into production that would have come out around like 2002, 2003. Like, that's what this felt like to me. And in 2020, I'm just like, man, there are so many other issues in the world. Why do you have to pick one based on like people, right? Like, why do you have to pick one based on existing biases that are not going to help? What are you trying to say with this movie? And then there's this whole issue of like, I want to basically call it like white saviorism, where it's like, oh, well, I can talk to them and relate to them as a human, and maybe I can get out of this situation and all this stuff. I'm over it. We have evolved. We have moved on. I don't need tropes about like remorseful terrorists and trying to humanize people and stuff like that, because they are human. And we've seen this story and we've seen this side of the story so many times. Like, I have seen the like, oh, the white guys are the good guys and, they're under attack and it's crazy circumstances and all this stuff. I've seen it so many times and I don't need to see it again. Like, I want to see different narratives. I want to see, what brought these people to this point and how they have been imposed upon. I don't actually want to see that, but like, that to me is a more interesting story than a white dude under duress, because I've seen it. So I was just super stressed out by this movie as well. Like, I'm glad I'm not flying anytime soon, but I also was just like, well, it's so kind of ridiculous that like, maybe, I'm not as scared by it, but why are you trying to scare me? I had to step away at one point because I was just like, this is very anxiety inducing, but like not even in a constructive or entertaining way. I think if it were not for Joseph Gordon-Levitt's performance, I would give this even lower rating, but I'm only going to give it 1.7 out of 5. And then finally this week, I have a film called Babyteeth, and I was trying to find my notes on it, and I realized that it was in a previous notebook and that it was a pre-COVID life, which is sad, but it wasn't actually that long ago. So I saw this a little while back, but I still remember it being, it left an impression on me. It stars Eliza Scanlen, who you might remember as Beth March from Little Women. And it also stars Ben Mendelsohn, Essie Davis, Toby Wallace. It's an Australian film, and it centers around a ill teenager named Mila, played by Scanlen. And it's kind of, the story of her first love, the story of her dealing with her illness, the story of her parents dealing with her illness. And there are definitely some like heartbreaking. There's a lot. I mean, the subject matter is heartbreaking, right? Like, anybody ill. I think more people are actually experiencing this now with COVID and stuff like that. But anybody who's dealt with illness in their family can immediately relate to this. And I feel like even if it's not in your family, or it's you probably know someone. So there's a universal empathy and sympathy that comes with that. And it's one of those benchmarks to me where I feel like I'm getting older, where I start to side with parents more in films than teenagers. And I'm like, oh God, like, it must be so stressful. And her first love is this guy who's just a total freeloader, not great influence type character. But it's also like, well, isn't anybody a good influence at that point? If they bring her joy, should it not matter? So it's them kind of dealing with all of that stuff, and it's not going to be an easy film to watch right now. Probably it might actually end up being weirdly cathartic in some cases. I also should note, like, this movie features a couple of my worst nightmares. One of those is like losing my teeth, right? Like, I think a lot of us have had those teeth falling out dreams, and I was just like, please stop making me face this. Yeah, but I think the performances are really good. The story is original, but it also is not the most original. But I think the way that it is handled is absolutely worth a watch. So I'm going to give it 3.9 out of 5.